Everybody, thank you so much for joining today. It's a real privilege to be here, sharing a little bit of your morning with you. So I personally have been in warehouse management. We've been a publisher of warehouse management software for nearly 20 years now. But I'd like to really start today with this idea. Can you imagine if you were sitting in 2019 and you were thinking about, wow, what is 2020 going to look like? Boy, I can't imagine that anybody would say that it's going to turn out like it has so far. We're not even all the way through it with all the craziness going on. So, one thing that we know for sure is that life is changing. It's just changing. It has changed. And one of the things that we need to do as warehouse operators, if we're manufacturers or distributors or whatever, we deal with supply chains. So we need to change with the changing times. Things aren't going to go back to the way they were probably ever. Things are just kind of changing. So we need to be realistic, and we need to make some interesting changes. And you can look at this as a real problem, or you can look at it as an opportunity. And so I always like to look at anytime there's a big change or a big shift, that is a really great opportunity for you to change your business a bit and do the things that others and your competitors aren't doing. So that's what I hope to share with you today. So let me get to this next slide here. So our agenda for today, we have an hour, but I'm really hoping to give you guys some of your day back. So what we're going to talk about is kind of the components of profitability in a warehouse. So we're going to talk about how we approach this problem, or this is not a problem as in a bad thing. It's a problem like a mathematical equation. Like, how do we solve this thing that we want to do? We'll talk about technology's role. We'll go over kind of a summary of all the things we talked about to kind of reinforce all the things that we've learned today. And then I'll open up for some questions. So if that sounds good to everybody, let's go ahead and jump right in. So when we talk about profitability, we'll just take basic business 101, warehouse management 101. There's two ways to increase profitability. One is to increase revenue, and typically that means servicing your customers better. We're looking at this from a warehouse perspective. And second is to decrease costs. And so the idea of minimizing the cost to serve customers. And so if this term of cost to serve customers is new to you, I'd love to be the first one to introduce it to you. If you already know what it means, I'd love to give you a good refresher. So cost to serve customers is probably the most valuable metric that you can have in your warehouse. So this idea of cost to serve is what was the cost to serve from the time I received the inventory to the time that the order was fulfilled. So all the costs that accumulate throughout your warehouse. So our job is to decrease these costs, but keeping in mind quality as well, because we want to serve our customers better. So that's really, if we minimize the cost as much as we can while maintaining a quality, then we will have done a good work. Now there's really a third one. We talked about profitability. When you think about profitability, you usually think in terms of financial, like how do we increase our value to shareholders and things like that. But profitability, and a lot of organizations are getting to this now, is profitability can be even outside of financial and be the environmental or social impact. So that is how some people are actually including that in their definition of profitability. Are we doing good for the environment? Are we doing right things for the human race? So this is a little bit outside the scope of what I'm going to talk about today, but we certainly can't ignore it. So I didn't want to ignore that. So what we're going to be focusing on mostly today as a warehouse management solution, or the warehouse management profitability, is minimizing this cost to customers, minimizing the cost to serve. So usually that can be things like, maximizing worker efficiency, space utilization, your quality of order fulfillments, and all those types of things. That's what we're going to be talking about today. Because I believe that if you get these things right, servicing your customers better is a byproduct of it. It happens to a great extent. So let's talk about how we're going to approach this problem. Again, it's not a problem like a bad thing. It's like a riddle to be solved. So let's start with this metric. 50%. So if we think about our warehouse budgets, kind of the industry standard is about 50% of your warehouse budget is labor. How does that resonate with you? Does that make sense? I've actually presented this number to quite a few warehouse executives, and some of them have actually said, that's not even close to right. My warehouse budget is 65%, 70% of my total budget, my labor budget. So with the decrease in supply and the increase in wages, really can make this a big part of your warehouse budget. So when we approach a problem, let's approach the big rocks. Let's not attack symptoms. Let's attack the big rocks. So labor is the problem to solve. Again, labor and people aren't a problem. They're just the riddle to solve. How we can maximize their efficiency to increase profits in our warehouse. Okay. So a lot of times when people come to me and say, Evan, I'm looking for a warehouse management system, the first question I ask them is, what's the problem you're trying to solve? And nearly every time, and it's almost comical how it happens, is people say, well, I want real-time inventory and I want to reduce paper. Almost everybody says that exact thing to me. And I know exactly what they're saying and know why they're saying it. But you have to understand that that is a symptom. That's not the problem. That's not the root of your issues. It's that your people are not properly equipped to do the job. When the people are properly equipped and the people can do the job, then those things take care of themselves. So how do we approach this? Labor 50% of our budget, where do we start? First of all, is we want our employees to know what we should do. What should I do? Right? If I do the wrong thing, I'm wasting time, I'm wasting resources, and it's not good. So if we get control of this, what should I do? For every employee, if they know exactly what to do, you're on the right track. Second is, do they do it correctly? So this idea of validation. And third is more of a management function, is management can see, how are we doing? If we can do these three things, you will have maximized profitability in your warehouse. And so that's what we're going to spend the rest of this time talking about. What should I do? Did I do it right? And can management tell how we're doing? Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about this. So systems support people. If you don't remember anything else in this presentation, other than this is why I put it in this really, really fancy pink, is that systems support people. Systems aren't the solution, they're a component of the solution. Okay, remember the problem we're trying to solve is to equip your people with the right things to do the right stuff. Systems support people. Awesome. So let's take an example of this. What should I do? So here's our warehouse driver. He's our hero for this story. This guy is one of your employees, and he's trying to do his best work for you. He takes pride in his work. He has a forklift with some boxes on it, and his question is, what should I do with it? That's the question that he's asking right now. So if you're a manual-based system today, he probably has some tribal knowledge. It says, well, it needs to go over here because it's this type of product, which takes time and effort and things like that to get people to have that tribal knowledge. But I'll suggest to you that there's really two types of systems that can answer his question. Okay, so the first one, I didn't say there's one that can answer his question, but there's two ways to approach this problem. One is, so when people talk about barcoding systems, they usually think in terms of, hey, it's just a way to input data, which is true. And sometimes people even call it a warehouse management system, which is not. So the first system is that first, like just the barcode system. So what barcode system is the question that they ask your employee here? Oh, sorry, messed that up. What they ask your employee here to do is, well, you know where to put it. You put it somewhere and you tell me where you put it. So I move these over to a bin in the warehouse. If you go from completely paper to a place that records transactions, you've upgraded from paper to what's called a data collection system. For a lot of people, that does exactly what they need it to do for where they are, and that's perfect. But you didn't invest in a warehouse management system, you invested in a data collection system. And that's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with them. For a lot of people, they do a lot of great work. But what we're talking about today is maximizing the profitability in warehouse. And so then we talked about the second type of system. And the second type of system is called a warehouse management system. Okay, so warehouse management answers the question, says, I will tell you where it should go. Okay, so I'll tell you where it should go based on everything I know that's going on in the entire warehouse, all the rules that have ever been set up, and based on the needs of these inventory items right this second. And so maybe it actually needs to go out to the shipping dock because it needs to be cross-docked, or maybe it needs to go to manufacturing because they're waiting for it. Or maybe it needs to go in our pick face replenishment, or nope, that's actually full, let's put it in overstock. So there's a lot of places where this could go, but the real question is where it should go. So think about it this way. If we receive some product and it's put away in an efficient place, the most efficient place, the rest of your processes can be efficient, like picking it for manufacturing or picking it for distribution, then taking it out the door. If you put it in a very inefficient place, you can never make up that efficiency. If you put it in something that's moving very fast, that should be close to the shipping dock, put it as far away from the shipping dock as you possibly can, you can never make up that efficiency. You're going to be inefficient from that moment on. So efficiency starts at put away. So if we know where it should go based on all the rules and everything going in the warehouse, what we're going to do is we're going to minimize the travel time for this employee. When we minimize employee travel time, we minimize cost, we increase efficiency, our cost to serve decreases. So hopefully that all makes sense. We want to reduce this person's travel time and all of his teammates. We want their travel time to be as minimal as humanly possible. Okay, so what should I do? So first we look at the right system. We're going to be talking about warehouse management systems today that direct people to do the right thing and support this person and his efforts and his teammates' efforts. So what should I do? We tell them what to do to optimize. So in order to make this happen, there's a couple things you have to have. So if a system's going to be crunching data and calculating and do all this stuff, we need a couple things. Accurate inventory, it has to be in real time. Okay, this is usually where people start with me. They're not thinking of how do I reduce this guy's travel time and how do I make him stuff do more accurately. We start here, but I'm saying this is a component of it. When we have warehouse management systems, we start getting more accurate inventory and it's absolutely real time. And the second is you have to have the right system that can optimize your warehouse. So when I talked about put away just a second ago, a lot of times people say, well, I have direct to put away. I have my primary bin and my secondary bin and my tertiary bin. Pick one of those three. What I'm suggesting to you that a warehouse management system, actually you set up parameters and rules of bins, items, zones, customers, all these types of things. And then based on all these parameters, then actually it calculates in real time, right in that second, where it should go. It's not limited to just a few places. So that's what we do in the Mode 3 warehouse management system. Okay, so what should I do? Second is, did I do it correctly? And this is probably it's not insignificant, but it's probably the shortest part of what we're going to talk about today. Did I do it correctly? Feedback to the customer that says, congratulations, you did it right, or oops, that wasn't quite right, why don't you try this? Think of your day, if you're a paper-based system today, and somebody's there's constant moving forward. Hey, I did 2 of these, yep, I moved 2 of these, I write it on paper, and I submit it to somebody. You never really get that feedback that says, yeah, you did it right. On your journey today, your 8-hour journey today, you can say that, yes, boy, I've done 100 things right today. And when we talk about the humanity of work and the humanity of technology, for people to get little, let's call it micro rewards throughout the day that says, you did something right, this is exactly what you're supposed to do, there's an increase in humanity. There's a whole study on this. I've been to a number of talks about this, of when management does things for their employees, for the rank and file employees, that makes their life easier, the loyalty, the appreciation that the rank and file that your warehouse managers, warehouse workers have is just off the charts. It really makes a difference. So there's a humanity here of just being able to say, awesome, you did exactly the right thing. But that's the soft side of profitability. Happy employees. Is it something, a line item in your financials? No, but does it affect your financials? Absolutely. So our third component. Our third component is really the management component. Are things being monitored and reported? Now we're really looking for people to do the right thing. We're not looking to beat people over the head. We're looking to say, boy, look at my team is doing great. But how do you know they're doing great if you can't see it, if you can't measure it? So this is kind of an example. I've kind of changed the numbers and some of the reports and things like that I've actually did for a prospect of ours. And so as we work through, okay, we want to reduce labor costs. We want to increase efficiencies and all this type of stuff. Well, let's really define what we're trying to do. And when you define something, we can say, okay, well, here are the three major things that we're trying to do with a warehouse management system, what we're trying to accomplish. Again, the technology comes in later. We're doing the business side here. So the business side was reduce returns from wrong items shipped to zero. This was a customer who had a whole lot of the wrong product being shipped to people. By the time you return it back, all the freight, the human time and the time to get it out and the freight to get it back is really, really huge. If you have that problem, it's not an inventory problem, it's a people problem. So enabling your people with the right tools is all that is. And so what we said, okay, awesome. We're gonna take this to zero. We're not just gonna reduce it by 50%, we're gonna eliminate this thing. And so what we did is we said, well, there's a feedback loop. So what we wanna do is we know that these are the characteristics of the transactions that are gonna help us understand how we're doing, so where we are today and where we're going to be. And so we have a dashboard that actually will show this. So where we are today and the number that we're looking for in the future. So being able to say, this is what we're going to do. We have a process and a technology to help our people be supported in the warehouse. And the last piece is management can look at this every day, twice a day, as many times as they want to, and they can see in real time how they're doing. Okay. You want to know if you need to tweak something right away, or if you need to, or if it's running great, it doesn't need your attention. Okay. And then obviously we're talking about profitability. We're talking about the financial side of profitability. And anytime you go into a project, you have to be able to say, when will this be paid back? What's my 5-year ROI, net present value, and internal rate of return? So we help people calculate those numbers. But what we do first is we say, what's the problem? What can we do to help that problem? How are we going to measure it? And then we know that we can get these numbers. So monitoring and reporting. So that's kind of the cycle of how you maximize it at the business level. We empower our people, tell them what they should do. We tell them that they do the right thing, and then management can monitor and optimize the processes. The second thing in warehouse management is labor. So we're talking about labor. Anytime I kind of surprise people, I think, when they want to talk about a warehouse management system, I start talking about labor versus inventory control and receiving and things like that. But labor is the problem to solve. So here's an interesting quote from Gartner Research, the largest research company in our industry. They said that most companies under 100 warehouse personnel don't use a labor management system. Yet a significant cost of the warehouse is labor, as we previously talked about. So I'm not sure if any of you have less than 100 warehouse personnel, but I'm suggesting that if you do, I would expect that you probably don't have anything that reports on probably one of the biggest line items of your warehouse, other than time clocks maybe, and maybe a line in your financial statements. So as we developed warehouse management over all of these years, we said, you know what? what a warehouse management system does is about 95% of what a labor management does. So why can't we actually make the two together instead of being like warehouse management is your inventory tracking and labor management is all your people tracking? Why can't you mush them all together into a single solution and make it? And the reason why this is true is because to buy a labor management system, to have all your time studies and engineering studies and all that kind of stuff is a massive investment. It is such a massive, and the researcher, Gartner, told me, he said, what he tells people is that if you decide to do a labor management system, you're married to that idea. You now have an ongoing commitment to this thing forever. And that's why people don't do it. So what we're suggesting with Mode 3 is you have a low time to value. You're married to your WMS. Your WMS helps you get your labor tracking as well. There's quick real-time decisions on labor. It happens immediately. It's rapid implementation. We can have this thing configured in less than a day with your Mode 3 WMS. And it's agile. So instead of this old-fashioned idea of engineering studies and guys with stopwatches and clipboards, it shifts with you as your processes change. So I'll show you that in just a few minutes. We'll talk about that a little bit more. So if we're managing, if remember, we're considering that it's people, it's a problem to solve. Part of that is an inventory accuracy, and part of that is going to be our just people time and what they're doing. So monitoring that. Okay, so this next section, we're going to talk about the role of technology. The role of technology. Technology supports people. Technology supports your people. So the role of technology isn't the main, it's not the starring role, it's a supporting role. So what we want to do is to minimize cost and disruption in your warehouse, because anytime all of you have gone through an ERP implementation, it's very expensive and it disrupts your business. It just does, and it's a shame, but that's just part of it. It's what you sign up for. But with warehouse management, we're really trying to minimize the cost, minimize the disruption as you change your technologies. And second is, like we talked about before, enforce the right behaviors. Make sure people are doing the right thing and that they're told that they're doing the right thing when it's done. How do we do that? First is the idea of an easy to deploy. So Mode 3 is a cloud-based WMS. You don't have to deal with your servers. You don't have to deal with networks. You don't have to deal with backups, redundancies. What if your server goes down? And you don't have to deal with all that stuff. So Mode 3 is a native cloud-based system. It was developed in the web for the web. It's not just a system that's hosted, it's actually truly a cloud-based system. And easy to learn. This isn't just a graphic, it's actually an actual picture of our warehouse management system. The idea of consumerization of technology in the enterprise, we have taken that hook, line, and sinker. We believe it's absolutely true. Because we go back to the humanity of software, if outside of your warehouse, people are using their iPhones and things like that, consumer technology, and then they come into your warehouse and you give them this big brick scanner with 128 keys and in Windows 95 looking usability, it doesn't help. If you give them an iOS device and in software that's made for iOS, there's a humanity. They can learn it. It becomes easy for them. And third, about minimizing cost of disruption is as your company changes, the software needs to change as well. So that's the role of technology. Technology supports people. So this is one of the dashboards that we have, and I'm going to talk about the labor side of this, like what people are doing. So understanding what your team is doing. So if we say that we are 30% efficient, well, why are we? Well, do we not have technology to support them? Do people not know what to do, or other things? So this is one of our dashboards. We use Microsoft Power BI for our dashboard. So the benefit is you're not in a box. You don't have the 27 dashboards that Mode 3 gives you. You can create your own from the same data that we created ours from. Super flexible. But what we're going to do first is we're going to look at what's called a user timeline. So what we do in Mob3, which is unique, is that we say every time one of your users scans something, an item or a purchase order or a pick ticket, that they get credits, which is kind of a green bar. And this green bar is about this wide, maybe this wide, depending on the transaction type. And so, it's only a specific amount of width. So if I scan a purchase order and I don't scan anything for another hour, I don't get credit for that whole hour. I only get credit for this small bar. But if I scan an item on that purchase order, well, I'm still working on a purchase order and I get another bar. And then if I scan a second item on that purchase order, I get another bar. And if I scan a bin where it goes, and I get another bar. So I'm actually kind of painting in my bars as I do transactions. And again, this is absolutely real time. So let's take a look let's analyze this a little bit. So this is, if you could see the time, this is actually the day shift right here. And this is the night shift. So what you notice is, boy, this D Harrison, probably had lunch here. But boy, this person is really, they're doing a lot of scans, which means they're doing a lot of transactions. They're working hard. But then you look at this one and you say, okay, there's a lot of white space. Wow, night shift, what's going on? Very possible they had meetings, maybe they had trainings. So there's always something. But what you can do as a manager is you can actually ask the question, what was going on here? Oh, as a staff training, awesome. I did a little bit of work and then went back into training. Maybe that's true. But what I will tell you a story, and I'm by no means say that this is what everybody does. We had a customer who implemented Mob3. They said, we want the labor management. We're ready to start looking at it. And boy, they started to see some of these big white spots. So what they did is they started asking questions. They started looking around. And what they had found is that some of the staff had set up a weight gym in a remote corner of the warehouse. And they were kind of working out throughout the day. So this didn't tell us that there was a weight gym in there and nobody was doing anything, but it allowed us to ask good questions and find out that there was an issue. Issue was solved, productivity went up. Okay, so this is just for management. So we're tracking labor, like how are people doing? We want to give them the right equipment, but also they have to do the right thing. Now, the second thing in labor management that, again, this is stuff that is zero additional cost when you have a warehouse management like EBS, like Mob3, is we can say, what does peak performance look like? Well, let's see, sorry, this one. So we have this idea of user credits. So think about it this way. If you say that I'm picking pallets, and a pallet has 480 cases on it, but then I am a case picker, and I do mixed pallets, or I'm just sending out cases. I do one here and one there. How can you really compare somebody who's picking pallets, so one move is 480 cases, and someone over here who's picking individual cases? How do you even compare how they're doing? And the answer is you really can't, just on the face of it. So what we do is this concept called credits. We say if you move a pallet and the pallet has 480 cases on it, that you get, let's say, 1 credit. But if you're picking in this zone or these types of things, you're picking cases, maybe each case is 10 credits. So what we can do is we can say kind of level of efforts. We can now say kind of what's your standard credit and how are you doing? So we can look at the pass screen and say, are there a lot of white spaces? We can also look here and say, as we kind of normalize the data, how are people doing? Wow, hey, this is looking pretty good. Oh, something's going on here. Are they in training? Are they lifting weights in the back? I'm not sure, but we can certainly ask the question. And we go down here and we can see kind of how people are doing on standard credits. You get credits for the different types of work you do. And so again, there's nobody who's having to enter additional data. This is all coming out from the workflow from your warehouse management system. Okay, then you have things like your inventory levels and stuff like that. But this piece of just being able to know what your labor is doing is a really, really big and important part of maximizing profitability in your warehouse. Okay. So this Mob3 is a native iOS application. We only work on iOS. And is a very distinct decision. We actually, as executive team, said, first of all, we don't care what, as we wrote Mob3, our third generation application, we said, we don't really care what system we use, what handhelds we use. We just want it to be the best based on usability, security, and some other characteristics. And when we came out of our analysis, we said, it only makes sense to write this for iOS. It makes zero sense to write it for Android. The security of iOS, the usability, the footprint, when you get a version of an iPhone, you know the exact dimensions. There's a certain number of versions of iOS that it can handle, which is twice the amount that Android can do. So it just made sense. So this is native iOS app. Here it is. This is my phone. And it's an app that we download from the App Store. So what I want to show here, first of all, is just it's easy to understand. I know what I'm doing. We have a concept called smart barcodes, which essentially is no navigation. So this idea that you can go into, you can navigate it like this, like go to my item locator and pull something up. Yep, you can absolutely do that and show the inventory. But we have smart barcodes, which basically when I scan an item, it takes me into that exact screen. And so nobody has to navigate. If I scan a purchase order, it takes me to that purchase order. I scan a pick ticket, it takes me to that pick ticket. If I scan a bin, it tells me what's inside of that bin. So this idea of easy to use is a big deal for Mob3. Now, let's just look at some of the directed pieces. So my scanner finally decided to not work today, so I'm not sure what's going on there. But what I'm going to do, so just assume that I scanned a pick ticket. And when I scan the pick ticket as a user, this is the screen that comes up. So all the stuff that you just saw me navigate through, it actually doesn't exist. If I had a scanner, I would have shown you, but apologize for that. So there's tons of complexity that went into this. How we allocated the inventory, how we grouped our orders, or how we broke apart our orders into multiple picks. All that stuff happened behind the scenes through configuration. All the user needs to know is, here, you have one location to stop and you have one pick. Go to bin A11 and scan it when you're there. And when he scans, he's going to get a little bit of feedback, a little bit of a blue line here that says, yeah, that's exactly correct. And then they're going to scan this, scan the item, put 10 each on whatever they're doing. And then they're going to go on to the next thing. So for the user, this is the humanity. Again, this is so easy. You scan something, you know exactly what to do. You're told, yes, this is exactly right as you go through it. And then you're done. You as managers now know that this person is doing the exact right thing. We can tell their efficiency from our labor management. And we know that it's accurate, it's done accurately. So by solving this one issue, the people problem, enabling tools to help make to enable them to do the right thing, to give them feedback and report, is how you maximize profitability in your warehouse. So the last thing, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I really hope that I've changed your thinking as you think about maximizing the profitability. Maximizing profitability isn't buying a warehouse management or data collection system. The problem isn't just real-time inventory and paper-based systems. The problem is people. How do we, labor is a problem to solve. Systems are support the people. So as you look at, okay, we know the problem, we know how we're gonna attack the problem, get the system that supports it, and then have that management feedback loop. Okay, are people doing everything they want at the velocity that we want them to do it? And if so, this is how we're going to maximize the profitability in our warehouse.